The Green Road is set in the west coast of Ireland in the County Clare. It's a real road. It goes along the edge of the Atlantic in the uplands of the Burren, from Ballinahand and to the Cahir Valley with an amazing view of the Aran Islands. And I suppose it's about a family, but anyway, it contains a family. The first half of the book is 4 very distinct sections in which each of the siblings leave home, go to lives they could never have imagined, nor ever describe to the other. So they're the Madigans, Constance and Dan, Hannah and Emmett, and they have a mother called Rosaline, who's a bit of a business. She's a difficult woman and a fragile woman. She decides in 2005 that they've all left her, so she might as well sell the house, sort of in a kind of fit of peak at the ingratitude of her children. She decides to divide up the kingdom before she's dead, and she's going to sell the house, and they all come back, they all troop back for Christmas. It has been described as a book about family, but it's not really about family so much as about compassion. Each one of the siblings faces some kind of crisis of compassion in the first, or some challenge to their ability to empathise or love, or, you know, and they a challenge which they either meet or fail to meet. And I suppose the biggest challenge to their compassion is their own mother by the end of the book, that she is, you know, they have to see her as a real, ordinary, fragile human being. They go to New York, Asia, Africa, everywhere. I was really interested in the idea of elsewhere and leaving a small place, or a place that prides itself on being small and fairly claustrophobic and romanticised west of Ireland, and was really interested in the idea of when you come home and you're full of literally yourself, which is the adult that you have become, and none of that can be understood. So by the time we meet them again at Christmas, the reader knows more about each of these siblings than their brothers and sisters do, so that I wanted them to exist in a complex way on the page before they start talking to each other, which they do. I started out writing short stories, and I really love the short story form. It's a really natural and, at times in my writing life, easy reach for me to write a short story. I have a kind of sense in my head of what it is and what it should do. And somehow, when I started out, I wanted a short story that would achieve some sense of metaphor, that it would do the thing that short stories do, which is a little tumble before the end, or that it would open nicely. Short story is all about the silence after the short story, as much as anything else. Sometimes then I need to write long fiction. Short story is really personal for me, and I wonder, as I have got more readers over the last 10 years, whether I'm getting a bit afraid to be that personal, or in that short form. It's something I want to get back to. Writing is such an emotional business. You only do what feels necessary to you at the time, and you do whatever it is that's possible and feels right at the time. And I started out, I suppose, with more experimental or more modernist or postmodernist or not naturalist fiction. The Green Road takes, I think, that past. It's not like I'm writing naturalistic fiction because I always wrote it. I'm bringing some of those techniques, or some of that interest of fragmenting the realist novel and putting it into what seems like a realist novel. I always wanted to write a proper book. I always felt that I wasn't writing a proper book. I was just writing the book that was there. And so this book is much more of a proper book then. So I'm vaguely pleased about that. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I think stylistically, I am more and more interested in undoing or undermining the crystalline sort of narcissism of high style. I like a bit of style. I resist it equally. And it's the kind of tensions like that make a book work for me. That's something I have to figure out. If I look at my colleagues and contemporaries in the Irish tradition, you realise that the voices are so distinctive that that's when you know a writer is free and will keep going. When you find a voice that is written in contradiction to other voices, that Irish writers are always sticking their elbows out and making their own space and writing both with and against the tradition. I think for reviewers and academics in the UK, they find Irish writing to be stylistically quite lyrical or stylised. I think partly Irish writers aren't afraid really to work the sentence on the page, and that there's a pleasure in language that of which we are not afraid. We're afraid of some writers are afraid of other pleasures, about story making, about fiction making, about psychology perhaps, or psychologizing. But none of the Irish writers I know are afraid of the pleasure of the sentence. And I think that's really strongly evident in the work that we're seeing coming out today. My favourite question is, do you write in the morning or the afternoon? And it's usually asked by men at dinner who haven't got their wives with them. And they reach for questions. They say, do you write in the morning or the afternoon? And I say, funny, you should ask that. I work all the time. It's my job. I mean, or it's my vocation, or it's my profession. And so, and I'm minorly, I think, obsessive. You know, I fail to write often in the mornings, but I don't do anything else except fail to write. And I might then not fail to write in the afternoon. And then I'll write perhaps a little by accident in the evening when the kids are home. And some of your best things can happen when you're a bit distracted, you know, especially in the first draft. You just slap it down there because you're too busy squawking at them to get off their computers and do their homework. And so, and I then sometimes write late at night. So I don't really have a working day, but I don't have any other kind of day either. I started writing with computers so early that, to me, I rarely write sequentially, and I dip into a book, which is a kind of horizontal event for me, and I dip into it constantly, here or there or wherever. And so I'm revising all the time, and people who say, oh, I've done 10 drafts, it's like, I don't know how many drafts I've done. I've done, you know, these tiny micro drafts. I've done thousands of them. And if you change something at one, there's a lovely stage when you nearly have the book, when the cup is nearly full to the brim, you know. And if you change something early on, then it has reverberations throughout the book, and you have to then change and adjust and kind of tilt the mirrors. I kind of think of it as tilting the mirrors a little bit, all the way through the machine of the book. If I were a superhero and I had a superpower, it would have to be just really boring. I'd love to fly. Actually, I wouldn't mind being able to live in water.
Good one.
I wouldn't mind being a fish. So maybe a seal, you know. They have to surface. I wouldn't mind, yeah. Scuba diving was a bit of a blast in its time. I wouldn't mind having another self that would go out and do these things. If I was a superhero, I wouldn't mind being able to multiply myself and send out avatars. Yeah.